1970, I knew the car was obviously capable of finishing the race because we'd almost done it the year before. But I'd chosen to take the 4.5 litre engine instead of the 4.9. In qualifying, we were about 18th or 19th on the grid because we only had a 4.5 litre engine. All the other Porsches had 5 litre engines. And I thought I've dropped the biggest brick of my life because we're never going to get up there because you can't expect 18 cars to retire from Le Mans. But they did. 14 hours to go, that was a hell of a long time to defend the lead. And it almost made one nervous of actually carrying on through the rest of the race. I think that whatever was required to do the job, they would do. I think they would have gone to the ends of the earth to produce what was required to win a race, and they would lighten everything. They would make the body so light it was flexing. The chassis tubes were made as thin as possible. Anything that was steel was made out of titanium. They went to magnesium. They went to everywhere lightweight and aerodynamic too. I remember Porsche wanting to succeed so much that they would virtually do anything to achieve that aim.
For 1971, when Porsche were chasing that elusive second victory at Le Mans, they had a French aerodynamicist design this bodywork on a regular 917 chassis. It became known as the Pig because of the colour and these outrageous cuts of pork that were painted all over it. Porsche, well, they did that as a publicity gimmick because they hadn't got any sponsorship for the car. But I knew this car very well because in 1971, I was driving a Ferrari at Le Mans when Willie Calson, the factory Porsche driver, went past me at about 230 or 40 miles an hour and literally sucked me off the road. I discovered afterwards that whereas the long-tail cars had the air very gently spilling off the back of them, this one had a huge vortex that followed behind it and literally vacuumed me off the road.
Porsche won Le Mans outright again in 1971 with the 917 and took their third consecutive World Championship. But for 1972, with new regulations being brought in for the World Sports Car Championship, Porsche decided to redirect their racing effort at North America, an increasingly important market for their product. They focused a major attack on the 1972 Can-Am series, combining with the American-based Roger Penske team. Their secret weapon? A turbo version of the 12-cylinder 917, an open spider known as the 91710. Developing close to 1,000 horsepower from its 5-litre turbo 12 and housed in a special magnesium tubular frame weighing just 100 pounds. In 1972, the 91710 is the most powerful road racing car in existence.
The 1,000 horsepower turbocharged Can-Am cars were entering entirely uncharted territory in road racing. Previously, we'd seen something like 2,500 horsepower dragsters, which were powered by engines running on methanol, very, very highly tuned, nitromethane injection, all sorts of amazing gizmos attached to them. But here we were talking about a 1,000 horsepower engine, which was not only going to last a quarter-mile straight line sprint, it was going to run up and down through its entire rev range, through the gears, in a road racing car for a minimum 200 miles.
The 91710 would end the McLaren domination of the Can-Am series. Porsche would go on to win the championship in 1972 and again in 1973 with an even more powerful contender, the 5.4-litre 91730.
To give you some idea just how powerful this car was, from its 5.4-litre flat 12 twin turbocharged engine, it produced 1,100 horsepower. Until this time, nothing in Grand Prix racing, IndyCar racing, or NASCAR had been so powerful.
So powerful was the 917-30 that Porsche took it to the Talladega Banked Oval in the United States to make an attempt on the outright closed circuit record. On August the 9th, 1975, American driver Mark Donoghue reached an average speed of 221.12 miles per hour, a new outright closed circuit record that would hold for 15 years until 1990, when an Indy car eventually beat it. This would be the sign-off for the factory support of the 917 program, one of the most successful in motorsport history.
Porsche's realized in the early 1970s that just taking hold of a standard road car and modifying it to go racing just wasn't going to be good enough. If they were to stay competitive, then a fresh approach entirely was going to be needed. The answer was a production-built racing car, something that you could take straight off the production line and go and race it. This 2.7 Carrera RS was 210 pounds lighter than the 911's predecessor. The lightweight body, lightweight windscreen, 2.7 litre, 210 horsepower engine, wide wheels, racing brakes. For the first time, a spoiler was fitted in a production road car. It was needed because this car was not as stable as it should be, over 150 miles an hour. You could hill climb this car, you could road race it, even rally it. But if you wanted to take your international competition really seriously, then you needed an RSR. Porsche took some 40 of these RSs and made them into RSRs. 2.8 litre engine giving 300 horsepower for the first time. Wider wheels and even lighter than the RS. Porsche took a couple of these cars to the 1973 Daytona 24-hour race. They were hoping for a strong finish, maybe a class win. Well, one of them won the race outright. Now that's the first time that a production racing car had won a major race for them. Quite an extraordinary achievement and an excellent way to market your product, especially to the North American market. For 1974, there were some important styling changes. Gone was the old ducktail spoiler, to be replaced by what became known as the T-tray spoiler. You can see why. Other manufacturers copied this to give their cars a more sporting image. But the basic mechanical content of this new shape 3-litre RS car was the same as the old 2.8, but just wrapped up in this new body, which was aerodynamically better and cosmetically perhaps more pleasing. This is a rare beast. It's an IROC Porsche. That's a 3-litre RS that was specially built for the International Race of Champions series in North America. All the great drivers of their time were invited to drive these cars in a one-make championship. The American champion, Mark Donoghue, has been so impressed when he drove an RS that he got the organisers to order 15 of these cars from Porsche. 12 raced, 3 were for practice. Donoghue reckoned this car was indestructible. Unless you over-revved it or broke the gearbox, it wouldn't break. Well, he knew a thing or two. He won the series. But again in 1974, if you wanted to go racing seriously, you needed an RSR. So as in 1973, Porsche took a few of the RS chassis and converted them into all-out racers. Much, much bigger wheels, bigger brakes, an engine that was now giving over 330 horsepower with its throttle slide injection. These were the ultimate, normally aspirated 911s of the era. And so we can see, after a decade of development, how the basically simple 911 road car became the super racer, with triple the horsepower, twice the speed. And yet, they're still all 911s.